Hello, welcome to another Adventures in Bin Chat. So yeah, I've been trying to, I suppose, put these out now about once a month. I know I had a big gap between sort of September and December of 2023, and I've got back into it since December. I must admit, I'm struggling a little bit with using it simply because, well, I suppose what it's coming from is, for me, it's almost like there's three main components to, when you're doing a prompt that sort of factor in here. There's the prompt itself that you give it. There's what you've already said, if you've already said something. And often I refer to it as like the stickiness, but it's like an attention thing, with how much it references back to an original question. And then the third thing is the Google searching type thing that it does as well. And those three things sort of do this strange dance. And what I've been noticing recently is the stickiness, the attention side of things, isn't as great as it once was. And I'm not able to leverage it as well as I used to. And sometimes I have to be careful and like restate the obvious, even though I always assume that the whole point of it, you starting off a topic, was that it stayed on topic. But that seems to be waning. So I'm curious with what I'm going to do in this episode as to whether we see more of that. I've actually had to discard a couple of things I recorded a few weeks ago. Was trying to attempt to do something else where it just wasn't staying on topic, and it was making it really hard. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. Obviously, if you see this video, it's been successful. And so also what I've decided to do is make this like a companion video to something I've just done a couple of days ago, or when this video goes out, which was an episode of My Life in Objects, where I do a flip through of a favourite magazine of mine, which covers the 1980s in sort of rock and heavy metal, I suppose. That was put out in 2006 as a series of 3 magazines, exclusively through W.H. Smith's, but it was Classic Rock Magazine and Metal Hammer that collaborated. I mean, they're pushed out by the same publisher and I think the same writers right between the 2 magazines. But if you haven't checked out that video, check it out. It's going out before this one, even though I'm recording them on the same day. So yeah, what I decided to do for this is so I can just quality control this as we go along as best I can, is I'm going to focus exclusively on music genres in the UK in the 1980s, because I've got a better grasp on that than just worldwide. Even things like US or Canadian acts, I'm not so good at, fact checking on the fly, if you like, or just working out whether, well, as it's called now, I call it Bing Chat, Copilot, is, sticking to the facts, but we'll see. So I want to explore the sort of relationship between predominant music genres and underground music genres, and how it deals with the dividing line and stuff like that, and see what rabbit holes we go down. We'll see how we get on. So that's where we're going with this. I've got 4 very simple prompts that I've already got, and then we'll go from there. So first one is, what would you say were the predominant music genres in the UK in the 1980s? Okay, so we got new wave and new romantics. And also be interesting, because if you've seen my video on that that magazine that talks about 1980s in music, generally, if there's any genres, now of course why I say music genre, it was specifically about rock and hard rock and metal, really, classic rock, heavy metal sort of thing. So of course we're going to see some stuff here that's not necessarily in those categories. Now, okay, so it's talking generally about music genres that flourished in the UK, which is fine. I didn't specifically say I don't think, UK bands or UK artists, but because we've got several genres here which were fairly well populated by UK artists, you see the usual suspects here. So it's talking about new wave stroke new romantics, and the two, if you're familiar with them, you can see how they sort of fed into one another quite easily. So if you're familiar with a lot of early new wave bands, you can certainly hear how that stuff was carried on with the whole new romantic movement in the UK. The other interesting thing is you've got bands like Japan, who influenced a lot of bands, particularly like Duran Duran, who have origins in the glam movement. I mean, that early stuff. So you've got connections through there back to I suppose New York Dolls as well. We've got post-punk gothic rock, so again, usual suspects. Heavy metal, hard rock, and the Woobum and everything that happened after the Woobum. So again, you see here very UK artist biased. And we move on to hip hop and R&B. So of course that period, and this wouldn't have been covered in the magazine, it would be Grandmaster Flash, and I'm assuming he's Furious 5. Run DMC, Nina Cherry, interestingly enough, who is, I'm trying to think, her relationship to Eagle Eye Cherry. And Nina Cherry became a big influencer, sort of helper, in the launch of bands that were involved in the Bristol scene in the 90s. So that's the whole trip-hop thing. She's got strong connections with several people from that movement, so that's interesting to see her name come up in the 80s. And we've got Soul to Soul. I'm trying to think now. Yeah, that is... Let me just do a quick off-screen fact check. I'm trying to think when Nina Cherry's first album came out, because I did own that. And didn't she do backing vocals on a Bomb the Bass track, I think? Oh, she was in... Wow! She was in Rip Ring and Panic and the Slits. Ah, cool. Yeah, Buffalo Stance, Raw Like Sushi was the album that I remember, and that was 89. Okay. Yeah, 89. Yeah, half brother Eagle Eye Cherry. He had a big hit in 97 with Save Tonight, if people don't remember that. I'm looking up early career here. Let me just bring this across actually, because it is interesting. You can see what I'm talking about. So this is the article on Wikipedia. I was just looking here. Yeah, it's talking about somewhere here, Buffalo Stance, Raw Like Sushi. Why did I think she was involved with Bomb the Bass? I don't know if I've got that right. I might have to look that up as well. Huh. She and Harry lived in a squat in Battersea. Okay. What have we got? Arranger of Massive Attack Blue out of the airlines. Okay. Okay, they contributed to that. So when was Massive Attack's first album? blue lines. 91. Okay, so what? There's a 2-year gap there. So yeah, that's cool. I wonder then if, let me just get that out of the way. Yeah, I don't think I want to go down the rabbit hole, but for some reason I thought she had like guest vocals on something else, like a featured artist with on the bottom of the bass track, but I probably am misremembering that. Yeah, okay. Moving on. Okay. Stone Roses, just Mary Chain, the Pixies, the Smiths. We certainly came up when we were looking at that magazine. Now the Pixies, when was their first album? Oh yeah, Come On Pilgrim, 87. Because of course they were on that UK label 4AD, which was I used to use that almost as like a quality control thing. Was like if an artist was on 4AD, they were probably pretty good, because that was a sub label or a label under the Beggars Group. Started out 4AD, who a number of indie bands were on at the time in the 80s. Bauhaus, Cocteau Twins, Dead Can Dance, Clan of Zymox, however you say that, Throwing Muse, and Mars with Pump Up the Volume. That they were on that, and that was originally, I think, as intended as a lead into bands signing with Beggars Banquet, but it turned into much more, I believe. Yeah, so interesting label to check out. And they've got some stuff on Wikipedia where you can sort of go down a 4AD albums rabbit hole if you feel so inclined. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, of course, dance pop house music, Pet Shop Boys, Kylie, Depeche Mode. Yeah, of course, it was interesting seeing them transition through the 80s from, a very poppy synth pop band into something quite darker. So, you'd think Speak and Spell in 81, and then they move through, and then you've got things like, Black Celebration, Music for the Masses. I'm trying to think what was the track they really got into trouble for? So there's obviously Black Celebration on Black Celebration. And I was trying to think. So the singles off of that were Stripped, Question of Lust, and Question of Time, but Not Tonight. Were they actually even on the album? It's funny, I always forget. Question of Lust, Question of Time. Oh, But Not Tonight was on the CD bonus. Okay, so that wasn't on the original album. So yeah, Black Celebration came out in 86. And they were getting a much sort of harder sound. The sound had really been getting harder over a period of albums. Prior to that, they'd had the singles collection out 81 to 85, and then the studio album before Black Celebration was Some Great Reward on there. So that had People Are People on it, and Master and Son. Oh, that was it. The track I was trying to think of, which caused a lot of trouble, was Blasphemous Rumours. Or seems to. They were being interviewed a lot at the time that came out, I seem to remember. Yeah. got a bit of pushback from the religious community at the time in the UK, I believe. I don't know how well they were doing outside of the UK at that point. Yeah, I'm not sure. So let's try and flip this on its head and do, what would you say were the underground music genres of the UK in the 1980s? See what it does. I wonder if it's going to pick up bands like, I don't know, Psychic TV and Coil. Just trying to think when was Coil's first album out? Doing a bit more fact checking than I thought here. Oh yeah, 84. When did How to Destroy Angels come out? 84. Okay, we'll see whether they get name checked here. It's funny. It's one of those things where we are at a weird period where, you know, there is both a predominant music genre and an underground genre where the same bands are sort of coexisting as they straddle between the two. Because I can remember, you know, going to see, say, Sisters of Mercy, bands like that, live before they were really well known, and they were getting, like, you know, appearing in the chart. A good example actually of that is particularly The Mission, although I don't, it ain't been mentioned here yet. So if I look at that list and say, well, which bands didn't, or I don't, you know, I remember, I know them well because I was beginning to like the Fields of the Nephilim. Like I've got the first, I think, 3 Fields of the Nephilim albums, and I don't think I did go to see them. No, I didn't go to see them live. That's it. But I don't remember them having a massive amount of chart success. But the Mission did, and the Sisters of Mercy probably a bit later, after Wayne Hussey had formed the Mission, and Sisters of Mercy guy, whose name escapes me for the moment, had teamed up with, what's her first name? Morrison was her second name. She was in the Gun Club, I think, at one point. Yeah. So many bands, so many facts to remember. Okay. Oh, here we go. This is good. Okay, so it did pick up on the industrial thing. So that's good. Okay, so yeah, Throbbing Gristle, Cabaret Voltaire, Coil, and the bands whose name I can never pronounce. Sturzind Neubauten, I think that might be, but I probably mangled it. So, just quickly going back to Sister Mercy. So First and Last and Always came out in 85. Floodland came out in 87. I always associate them with having more success from that, the second album, than the first one. But I could be wrong on that. Yeah, Andrew Eldridge is the name I was trying to think of. And it was Patricia Morrison. And didn't she go on? Patricia Morrison is an interesting person because she was in the Gun Club, for Bible, Sister Mercy, and The Damned as well. Yeah. And The Damned. Yeah. And she married Dave Vanian as well. Yeah. I don't know if she's still married to him or not. She played on Grave Disorder. Wow. Yeah, so this is a really fascinating rabbit hole to go down. The whole Throbbing Gristle, Psychic TV, Coil. Trying to think of any other sort of TG spin-offs. They also haven't mentioned, and we'll see. Well, I didn't test run this question, I don't think, but there's another question, and they did mention a band called The Shaman, who I particularly used to like, yeah. But Cabaret Voltaire, I was a bit late to the party with. They're like, relatively speaking, like a fairly old industrial band. Was it 79? They were kicking around, and I didn't listen to them until Code, I think, which had Don't Argue on it, and White Car, and Sex Money Freaks. I picked up on them in 87. Yeah, New Wave. So I was trying to think, like, in the 80s. So where were Blondie up to? So was the first 3 albums were already out. So what was it, 78 to 81, I suppose, is considered to be like their mainstream success. So you have, first album was Blondie, 76, Plastic Letters, 78, Parallel Lines, 78, Eat to the Beat, 79, Auto American, 1980, and then The Hunter in 82, when Debbie Harry had that, I don't know if you remember the cover, that's just bringing it across, had the big hair moment. Yeah. So yeah, the only 80s album for Blonde, I don't know how well The Hunter did. And then No Exit was 99, so there's this massive gap. So really only 2 80s albums, and I would say, personally, Auto American might be the better known. That had The Tide is High and Rapture on it. Yeah. Talking Heads, Devo, the B-52s. Yeah, I remember someone I worked with used to, what was that? Was it called Party Mix, I think? Something like that. Their sort of collection album. I don't quite know what category it fell into. So Wild Planet by them, 79, 80, yeah, 80. So the first album, which was 79, would have had Planet Claire on it, and Rock Lobster was on the 79 album. Wild Planet was 80. Oh, there's it. Party Mix was 81. I don't know if anybody recognises the cover from this. Stopgap release. Yeah. 6-song collection featured songs from their first 2 albums remixed and sequenced to form 2 long tracks, one on each side. Yeah. So I do remember a copy of that. Yeah, and Devo. I was going to ask a similar question, actually, so I think I'll jump down that rabbit hole now. I had a question like, which UK artists became famous in the night? Who was the biggest impact on music? So I was more interested in probably bigger artists, but let's go down this rabbit hole. Oh yeah, and I was also going to ask, can you write a primer on the state of the UK enduring music in the 80s, and which bands went on to have wider success over time? Okay, so yeah, so I had 2 sort of questions that were very similar to this in some ways. I mean, so I've got to get my rogue thing back. It's enabling me to fact check on the fly here a little bit better when I do have a bit of a brain fart. That's my excuse. I mean, you can't expect me to carry around the whole of the UK music canon from the 80s in my head, can you? I mean, I probably used to be able to do that, but not so much now, I'm afraid. Okay, 76 to 80, so Curtis died in okay. When was that? Yeah, 1980 May, okay, so he died. So Unknown Pleasures was 79, Closer was 80, and then Still was a compilation album with various bits and bobs on it from 81. There's lots of interesting variants of, or slight variants of Love Will Tear Us Apart around. I don't think specifically on that album. I'm just looking down the listing to see. I can't remember whether they pushed something out on the 2007 reissue or not, like that. Yeah. I mean, subsequently stuff got released, didn't it? There was various sort of retrospective compilations that have emerged of Joy Division material. There was a really nice one, I think, that had almost everything on it as well. Yeah, so we're sort of straddling here a little bit, 79 into 80, but I suppose it's talking about, yeah, it's bands that, I mean, obviously Joy Division ended up in as New Order. Yeah, so yeah, so the Smiths, all their releases were in the 80s. Sonic Youth, when was, so Daydream Nation, when did that come out? That was 88, so yeah, quite. But they had, Evil was 86, Bad Moon Rising was 85, Sonic Dream was 84, Kill Your Idols, which is an EP, 83. So debut studio album, what, Confusion is Sex, that was 83, and Sonic Youth EP is 82. Okay. And The Cure was the first album out. I can't remember if the first album out was in 79 or not. I don't think it was it? 17 Seconds was the second album, was 80. If you're in the US, probably the first album you might have come across would be Boys Don't Cry. It's actually a compilation album. So the first one I'm thinking of is the Three Imaginary Boys, which was 79. But yeah, the vast majority of the Cure's output, well, everything apart from that first album is 80s onwards. So yeah, I went to see them around the time of The Head on the Door. I think the first album I bought by them was Pornography, but it could have been 17 Seconds. Yeah, I'm a bit blurry there. But I must admit, I do like that darker period, like 17 Seconds into Faith, into Pornography. And there was that weird Japanese Whispers compilation where they had the singles, Let's Go to Bed, The Walk and Love Cats, where at that period I think they were down to pretty much a two-piece, and then the top. Actually, it's the top I'm thinking of, not the Yeah, not pornography, or I don't know. I get confused sometimes. Yeah, I was just trying to remember whether it was the Top was the one that that's the Top I own on vinyl, but that didn't come out until 84, and I mean they were all over the radio before that, but yeah, my memory's a little bit wobbly, but yeah, I remember buying Head on the Door when it came out. I went to see them in Brighton. That was really cool. Oh, okay, that's cool. So it's actually, wow, it's being nice and helpful in terms of the questions it's asking me. So I'm going to go with those for the moment and build up a nice sort of bit of background knowledge here. Okay, so thriller and bad. Yeah, thriller was huge. I remember when I used to go clubbing, that would have been around 83, I think, 82, 83. So Thriller came out in 82, yeah, and they were just playing loads of stuff from that. You know, that I don't know if anybody remembers all the singles off of that album. Whoops, maybe it's not going to come up so well. So I'll rattle them off. The Girl Is Mine, Billie Jean, Beat It, Want to Be Starting Something, Human Nature, PYT, and Thriller. Yep. Madonna. Oh wow, yeah. Yeah, it certainly brings back memories of clubbing. Madonna and Prince. I just love those first two Madonna albums. Well, actually, yeah, but actually beyond that, they're just great albums. Yeah. I'm not too sure what my favourite is, really. So that Madonna first album was out in 83. So in the 80s you had Like a Virgin, True Blue, Like a Prayer. Erotica was 92. And then they had there was some interesting remix albums as well. So I think, was it You Can Dance, which is one of my favourites, and The Immaculate Connection, and Something to Remember. I bought all three of those when they came out, and they've all got really nice twists to them. So You Can Dance was a remix album, very much in the vein of reminded me a little bit of when Pet Shop Boys did that remix album after Please came out, which has got, I think, In the Night on it. So it reminded me a lot of that in the terms of the sort of delivery and the way the tracks were sort of extended. Although the two bands are Madonna and Pet Shop Boys styles are quite different. Immaculate Collection, didn't that have Justify My Love and Rescue Me, which hadn't been released at that point? And then the other one I mentioned, which was Something to Remember, also was an interesting collection because some of the tracks on there were, I mean, quite deep. So they were from, maybe tracks from like slightly deeper tracks from albums, maybe tracks from albums that didn't do quite so well, or tracks from soundtracks. Because I'll remember was from With Honours, the motion picture. There was I Want You orchestra with Massive Attack, which was new, and One More Chance, which was new as well. And This Used to Be My Playground, which was a standalone single. Oh, and You'll See as well was a new track. Wow. Oh, I'm enjoying this episode. This is working well, even though I was originally going to focus on UK artists. And this really works as a nice foil to this is turning out as a nice foil to the a magazine episode I did for My Life in Objects, because we're going down a bit more of a non-rock rabbit hole here, even though we're obviously picking up rock artists as well. So that's cool. That's going to be nice. I was rather worried that I might just be repeating myself. And I thought what might happen is I would have a lot to talk about because of bands like Throbbing Gristle not being featured in that magazine. But yeah, it's good to diversify. So I can't remember the first Whitney Houston album I listened to or have. See, I used to really like, in terms of female singers at that point in the 80s, Gloria Estefan. I've already mentioned Nana Cherry, and Janet Jackson. I particularly like the Control album, which was from around that period. So Whitney Houston debut came out in 85. I think I may have owned a copy of Whitney. That's the one with I Want to Dance with Somebody, doesn't it? On it, I think. Yeah, it does. But I'm not sure. Yeah, so the two albums from the 80s were the first album, the debut, Whitney Houston, and then Whitney, so Whitney Houston's 85, Whitney's 87. I'm Your Baby Tonight didn't come out till 1990. That's the one with her on the motorbike. And of course, U2. And U2 an interesting band because I remember somebody at work, our sort of clean-up tech that we had in one of the labs. So we used to have in each of the labs, I had someone that was responsible for sort of sanitizing all the glassware, because we used to get through a lot of glassware. So they'd look after like all the leachy, making sure that there weren't any antimicrobial residues in there or any residue that would then further affect any subsequent work you would do. So they were sort of responsible for dealing with all of that and dealing with the autoclaves and all the sterilisation stuff that kept with stuff clean. So, the techs could focus on, the lab techs could focus on, doing all the sort of lab work and didn't sort of get too distracted by doing other things. And I remember her coming in and talking about how obsessed her son was with a band called U2, and I'd never heard of them at that point. And it wasn't until later, around the time of, it would have been 83, I suppose, 84, where I actually got into them properly. But 1980, so I started working 81, so that would have been around the time of October. She would have been talking about son being into. And they had Boy Out in 80, October in 81, War in 83, Unforgettable Fire 84, Joshua Tree 87, Rattle and Hum 88, which is that weird hybrid live studio album. But then also they had Live at Red Rocks as well, came out, didn't it? Was that Under a Blood Red Sky? That was it. And that came out also in 83. And I think that was actually the first album I bought by them. I think there was still a hangover from the early 80s where if I didn't know a band too well, I'd buy their live album. I wasn't really big into buying compilations. There were a few exceptions, but if I didn't know a band that well, I'd buy their live album and then go from there. That was a sort of standard strategy in the house with me and I think all my brothers. So, yeah, I remember somebody buying not Hellbent for Leather, Unleashed in the East by Judas Priest. specifically for that, and Scorpions Tokyo tapes as well. Yeah, it's going to flip-flop here. You can see asking the same question. So I'm going to have a go at the primer thing. I just want to see what sort of angle it takes. It's similar to stuff I've already asked, but let's do a primer. So can you create a primer about the state of UK underground? Yeah, I've found that spelling is important. Sometimes it will just say, sometimes it will correct the spelling. Sometimes it'll say, you made a spelling mistake. Would you like me to suggest some sites to improve your spelling? And then other times, if the spelling's sufficiently weird, I think it actually adversely affects the answer sometimes. At least that's my theory. I have no proof. I'm speculating, a bit of mindless speculation there. All right. Okay. I just want to see if it takes I don't think it'll take much of a different angle, but that's cool. It's mentioned the venues, which is nice. So yeah, Blitz Club, Batcave, Hacienda. It doesn't mention. I don't know when the slime light became a thing. Wasn't that always associated with Electro Works? Limelight, Slimes. Okay, 87 that was. Yeah, Goth Industrial, Dark Techno, Dark Electro and Dark Wave. Okay, they've had bands perform there. VMV Nation, Crook Shadows, Combi Christ, Clan of Zymox or Xmox, however you say that, and Nitsa Ebb. Yeah, I really like VMV Nation actually, although they're a bit later, aren't they? They're more than 90, so we better not go down a VMV Nation rabbit hole. Okay, while I've been wittering away, what have we got come up? Okay, pretty much everybody I've spoken about already. But this was interesting. The Batcave. What else have we got here? It wants me to do this, doesn't it? What's the difference between gothic rock and post-punk? Let's do this as well. It's sort of intermeshing stuff that I've already asked, but we'll give it a go. So what UK artist who became famous in 1980 with the biggest impact on music? So similar to stuff we've seen before. So no doubt we'll get Joy Division, The Cure, The Smiths, but we'll see. David Bowie this time. So yeah, of course, what was Bowie up to in 80? That would have been around the time of Let's Dance, wouldn't it? Let's have a look. It's a bit of off-screen shenanigans. Okay. Scary Monster Super Creeps. Love that album. Let's Dance, 1980 Scary Monster Super Creeps. Let's Dance, 83. Tonight, 84. Never Let Me Down, 87. Okay, yeah. So sort of lost interest a bit after Let's Dance. Yeah, okay. So good to know. So 4 albums in that year. I have no idea of what the style is on Tonight, to be honest with you, or Never Let Me Down. Of course, yeah, Queen, 1980. Yeah, difficult not to think about 1980s without Queen. But what did they actually have out then? So yeah, The Game, Flash Gordon, which is the soundtrack to the film. Hot Space, 82, The Works, 84, Kind of Magic, 86, The Miracle, 89, and Innuendo was actually 91. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 albums released if you include Flash Gordon in 1980 versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 albums in the 70s, 73 to 78, and then 2 in 91, although one of them was made after Freddie Mercury died. So 91, 95, Innuendo 91, Made in Heaven 95. So yeah. Yeah, the Smiths run was short but sweet. So yeah, it was all done and dusted for them within the course of 3 to 4 years, album wise, maybe. Let's just check that. In terms of the timeline of the band. Yeah, 84 The Smiths, 85 Meet His Murder, 86 The Queen is Dead, and 87 Strange Ways, Here We Come. And then in amongst that, you've got a number of very interesting other albums, because you've got all the fairly deep delving compilation albums that were released while the band was still going. So Hatful of Hollow, The World Won't Listen, did that come out when they were still going, I think? Not sure. Yeah, it must be. Louder Than Bombs, same year as well. I think it got a bit muddy with those two albums, because didn't they create one? Yeah, so The World Won't Listen was the UK one, and then Louder Than Bombs was the US one. Yeah, so that's why they came out the same year. So February, and when did Strange Ways Here We Come out? September. So yeah, they were still releasing studio albums when those three compilation albums that I've mentioned came out. But like I said, they contain quite an interesting selection of tracks because of the fact they're singles. So you stumble across stuff that weren't on albums. There's also a live album from '88, released after the breakup, called Rank, recorded in '86 at the National Ballroom in Kilburn. Oh, that's cool. It's got, obviously listed the bands that may have been inspired or have been inspired. It's interesting, as far as the underground scene mentioned, no mention of Killing Joke. Probably one of the most important bands. But you can see it's tending to focus on like 4 to 5 bands. I don't know whether I want to use... We'll see what happens. Oh, pop. There we go. Polar. It's getting confused probably. It's thinking, what do you mean by polar? Oh, there we go. It has spell corrected me. Okay. Duran Duran. The Police, yeah. So there's quite a few here that aren't being mentioned as a first choice. Iron Maiden. Yeah, big output in the 80s, as we saw from the magazine flip through. Pet Shop Boys. Yeah, great band. You have a pretty eclectic musical taste, as you've probably gathered by now. Oh, the Eurythmics, yeah, wow. popular bands. Less popular in whose eyes? That's the problem, isn't it? There's always this thing between chart success, album sales, popularity with critics, popularity with fans, popularity on the live circuit. Oh yeah, the sound, au pairs. Oh, the Plimsolls. Okay. Not a UK band though. Banshee, power metal band from Kansas City. I've never heard of them. Clearly not from the UK though. Bo Nasty. Okay, hopefully they're not just making these up. We've seen this before, haven't we? I don't know if you remember where they started to make up these bands. Banshee. I don't know. Music. Oh yeah. Melodic power metal band from the American Midwest. I take it back. So there probably is a Bo Nasty. What was that weird character in Rupert, Mr. Shagnasty? Or am I imagining it? Oh, Bear Nancy. It says, did you mean Bear Nancy? Well, I do see it listed 1989 in heavy metal. Bo Nasty, dirty but well dressed. Okay. So, am I going to go down a Rupert the Bear rabbit hole? Characters, let's have a look. Badger Bow. Rollo the Gypsy Boy. Now I must have misremembered that. It couldn't be a character called Mr. Shagnasty. There's Raggetty. No, I must. I don't even know where I got that from. Oh dear. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know how we ended up with Root. Oh, because of Bo Nasty. Okay. Let me do. What about Killing Joke and Sim artists? Yeah, so it's not, I mean, it's almost classifying it as a new question. As I'm saying, tell me about Killing Joke. It's not trying to sort of blend it in and say, oh yeah, Killing Joke are, a band that was active in the 80s. So it's doing things in a similar style. Well, I asked it, but yeah, so it's adopting the style of previous stuff, but and it's locked into the 80s, although Killing Joke was mainly from the 80s in terms of their releases. I think, I'm trying to remember when the debut album was out, but I think it was it 80 or 79? I think that's right. Yeah, Killing Joke came out in 1980. So they had, Killing Joke, What's This For, Revelations, Fire Dances, Nighttime, Brighter Than a Thousand Suns, and Outside the Gate all came out in the 80s. And so referencing Ministry here. The Cure, the sound again. New Model Army, went to see them live. They were really good live. Yeah, big sound for a three-piece. At least when I saw them, they were a three-piece. The Young Gods, this is an interesting band. They're like a Swiss industrial rock band, using samplers, synthesizers to get a pretty heavy sound. There's been a few bands over the years, I think, that have taken, obviously taken sampled guitar and used that. And I believe that's initially what the Young Gods did. They used guitar samples as opposed to actually having a guitar player. But again, I could be a little bit wrong on that. Yeah, Ministry, pretty heavy, but there's some good live footage of them. There was that video called "In Case You Didn't Feel Like Turning Up," which is pretty cool. I think I'll stop it there. Actually, that was an interesting, counterfoil in some ways, compliment, however you want to look at it, to my flick through that magazine showcasing the sort of 1980s in rock stroke metal music, classic rock. So it's interesting to see it through a slightly different lens. But there is just, so many bands that I can think of that I was exposed to in the 80s. I was probably at the peak of my music buying in some ways, although I suppose there are times in the 2000s where that I exceeded that because CDs were so cheap, as I sort of mentioned in that talk through of the magazine, because that came out in 2006. I certainly buying a lot of stuff on cassette, mainly I think in the 80s, and going to a lot of live gigs in the mid 80s. Sadly, there's quite a few gigs that I just couldn't afford to go to. Sort of ran out of money for the month. But that first Stone Roses album is just amazing. Yeah, awesome band. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future episode.